Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Housing Crisis Action featuring Senator Mike McGuire, our featured speaker tonight. He is the representative of the 2nd District, state of California, and someone who has really developed an expertise in housing, been a leader, and we are just thrilled to have Senator McGuire here tonight. The way we're going to do this is we're going to have the senators speak, and then all of you have questions. If you haven't already sent it in when you did your registration, you can put your question in the chat, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as possible. And just to remind you, we are being recorded. So after this meeting, we will share the recording with you, so you have it if there's things you want to go back and hear again. And I just want to welcome you on behalf of Housing Crisis Action. We are a countywide housing advocacy organization trying to bring together all the different groups and people who support more housing in Marin, because we want to address the housing crisis that we're in. We've certainly seen from the pandemic that the need for everyone to be housed has never been demonstrated to be more important. And if we want to keep our economy going, have our communities be the vibrant communities we want to live, we need to bring more housing to Marin County. We're one of the few counties right now that actually lost population. And a lot of the reason people are leaving is because they can't live in Marin County, which anybody who's able to work in Marin County, we would hope they'd be able to live in Marin County too. So welcome, Senator McGuire. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here, and giving us this time out of your busy schedule is greatly appreciated.
Hey, well, good evening, Ms. Murray. Thank you so much. Ms. Webster, thank you. And to each and every one of you who are joining us tonight, we are so excited to be able to share this conversation in the new year with each and every one of you. Ms. Webster, Ms. Murray, and I were talking prior, and what we'd like to be able to do, if it works for each and every one of you, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time covering issues related to the budget and housing, talk about some additional economic incentives for the most vulnerable Californians. We'd like to focus on some of the pieces of legislation that we're moving forward. But the most important part of tonight is hearing from each and every one of you. Cynthia Murray will be the moderator tonight, taking your questions. We look forward to hearing from you, your comments, your questions, your concerns, your criticisms. Anything goes tonight. So we look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. And again, just want to say thank you for joining us and for allowing me to be with you. Let's just be candid. We thought that we were going to see some change January 1st, 2021. And this past week in the United States of America has been anything but the change we wanted to see. This past 11 months, with the devastating global pandemic, so many hurting financially in this state, in our nation, the righteous pain and anger over the racial injustice that exists in America, and the insurrection in our capital last Wednesday, it has been hard to be able to hold out hope. But I'm a firm believer, as I think each and every one of you are tonight, because you are joining us, I'm a firm believer that our counties, our state, and our nation's best days are still ahead. And here in California, we have to confront some of the biggest challenges that are facing our communities. Two of them, the lack of housing for our workforce and homelessness. On housing, I'm a firm believer that no community should see radical change. But because of the crisis at hand, we must accept some change in our communities. So what I'd like to be able to do is start out with some statistics about where we're at as a state when it comes to housing and homelessness. And then I'd like to then transition to budget. So I'm grateful to be able to co-chair the Housing Working Group with President Atkins. She's president of the California State Senate. And we are focused on expanding desperately needed housing for the most vulnerable Californians and our workforce. And let's just be honest about this. The pandemic has made our housing crisis even worse here in the Golden State. Between 2015 and 2025, that decade, California has needed about 1.5 million affordable rental units. affordable rental units, just to be able to keep up with our current demand. When we take a look at the top 30 most expensive rental markets in the United States of America, California is home to 20 of them. When we look at our for sale market with housing, California is home to 4 of the 5 most expensive for sale markets in the United States of America. That includes San Francisco and Silicon Valley, Orange County, and the city of San Diego. We're at the lowest home ownership rate, the lowest home ownership rate that the Golden State has seen since the 1940s. And that's concerning because when we take a look at wealth in the state, the number one nest egg that families and especially working families have is their home. 40% of Californians pay more than 30% of their annual income towards their housing costs. And when it comes to the Bay Area, when it comes to the issue of job creation versus housing creation in Santa Clara County, for every 10 jobs that have been created, 1 home has been developed. In San Francisco, it's about a 6 to 8 to 1 threshold. For every 6 to 8 jobs created, 1 home has been developed, and that's according to Bloomberg. So what the heck are we going to do about it? We can talk till the cows come home. So let's first talk about investment. The state of California must be active and engaged in helping local governments tackle this affordable housing crisis with additional funds. So first and foremost, over the last 24 months, we've invested about $1 billion in low-income housing tax credits. So we're going to invest another $500 million this year minimum in expanding the low-income housing tax credit program. Quickly, what the heck this program does, it is really the gap funding from when affordable housing development gets close to completion when it comes to the planning, and an affordable housing developer like Homeward Bound doesn't have enough liquidity to be able to get it across the finish line. They're able to turn to these tax credits. It's critical. In about over the last 2 years, we've seen about 16,000 affordable housing units, workforce housing developed with both state and federal tax credits. We have to focus on the homelessness crisis that exists in our state. About 152,000 Californians call the streets of our communities home each and every night. 30% of that population are veterans. Think about that. They've sacrificed so much for our country overseas, and they're sacrificing yet again on the streets of San Rafael and Santa Rosa and Eureka. It's unacceptable. So we're going to put additional $750 million into a very successful program called Project Home Key this coming year. What we're seeing is that local counties, cities can go out and purchase hotels, for example, and transition those hotels into permanent supportive housing. It's happened at Kerner in San Rafael. It's happened with America's Best Value Inn in Corte Madera. 6,000 units have been secured across the state in the last 10 months for affordable housing, which are permanent supportive housing, wrapped with services with mental health, as well as addiction services as well, at a cost of about $140,000 per unit, which is absolutely critical, much cheaper than being able to develop. Now, in the budget, we're going to take early action on portions of the California budget this year, which includes housing and homelessness. We'll most likely be taking, rather in June, we're going to take this budget up in January to ensure the money can flow immediately to cities and counties across this state. Also in January, we're going to take up the eviction moratorium. We have to extend the eviction moratorium. We have a deadline of January 31st. In the latest federal stimulus bill, the state of California has received $2.6 billion from the federal government to be able to compensate landlords as well as tenants for back rent. 1.4 billion of the 2.6 is going to come directly to the state. 1.2 billion of the 2.6 will go directly to counties with a population of 235,000 or more, which means Marin County will be seeing a direct allocation coming to it from the federal government. We need to get this eviction moratorium extended. More to come on that. I don't mean to be squishy about commitment. I know that we are going to see an extension, but negotiations are happening right now with tenants, with local government, as well as landlord advocacy groups. More to come on that. I know we'll talk about that here in just a bit. In addition, we have to get additional dollars into the pockets of most vulnerable Californians. That's why I want to talk quickly about the issue of the Golden State stimulus. This is an issue that we've been really focusing on over the last 6 years. I think when you see challenge as a kid, which my mom and I saw financial challenges growing up, you want to be able to change that as an adult. So I've been very focused on expanding the earned income tax credit here in the state of California over the last 6 years. Right now, about 4 million Californians who make $30,000 a year or less are signed up for the earned income tax credit. The vast majority are women because, let's be honest, 2/3 of minimum wage earners in this state, 2/3 of minimum wage earners are women. So this benefits the earned income tax credit, in particular, benefits women and kids. What we're going to do for those 4 million most vulnerable Californians, they're going to receive an additional $600 stimulus check, matching their $600 federal stimulus check for a total of $1,200. We know this earned income tax credit keeps 1,200 kids in the county of Marin out of poverty every year. 1,200 kids across the state. 376,000 kids are kept out of poverty by both the state as well as the federal earned income tax credit program. It's critical. We're expanding it. It is absolutely necessary. Now, I want to focus now on the housing bond. Again, one of the biggest challenges that local cities, no matter if it's Tiburon or Novato, have when it comes to the development of affordable housing is actually getting an active and engaged partner with dollars to build it. So I'm working right now with our president of the Senate, Tony Atkins, on the development of California's latest affordable housing bond. I'm not trying to be squishy with you tonight. It's still very early. We are currently meeting with local government advocates, tenant advocates. We're working with affordable housing developers right now to be able to develop the meat of this affordable housing bond. We'll be able to unveil more on this within the next 60 to 90 days. We look forward to hearing your feedback on what you think needs to be in this affordable housing bond. But again, 1.5 million affordable rental units is needed in this state between 2015 and 2025. So we focused on budget, everybody. We are in the home stretch. Here we go. Let's talk about legislation that's going to be coming up here in 2021. The Senate is going to be advancing, in addition to seeing legislation coming from the Assembly on the eviction moratorium, the Senate is going to be advancing our Senate housing package. I'm going to quickly go through those, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on them. SB 6. Senate Bill 6 develops a streamlined process to be able to transform dead and dying malls and office parks into neighborhoods with new tax-generating retail. The only catch on this bill, 2/3 of the development has to be housing, 1/3 retail. You have to have that mix. Again, only focused on dead and dying malls and office parks. The important part of this, everything has to be consistent with local zoning standards, setback, floor area ratio, height, etc. But 2/3 residential, 1/3 retail to be able to transform those dead and dying malls, that economic blight that we have in our communities. Second, SB 9. SB 9 encourages small scale infill neighborhood development spearheaded by homeowners. It's the duplex fourplex bill. So I want to explain what this does quickly. So if you are a single family home owner, you can do a one-time transition of your single family home and transition it into a duplex. If the city in which you live in, allows for another single family home to be built in the one that you live in now, you could put in a duplex. So that could mean a single family homeowner working within the zoning could have 4 units on one lot. If the city doesn't allow you to put a single family home behind your primary, you can't. If you want to be able to put a granny unit, an ADU or a JADU and do a duplex, you can't. You have to be able to pick one or the other. You can't double dip. And the important part of this bill, all local zoning applies, meaning setbacks, floor area ratio, as well as all issues of height. So if you can't fit that additional duplex in the back per your city based off of their zoning code, then you won't be able to build it. I just want to assure you that this does not override local zoning as far as floor area ratio, height, and setback, and it doesn't mandate if a city doesn't allow for a second home to be built in the back because the lot is large enough, it doesn't mandate that a second home or duplex has to be built. It's only based off of local zoning. Okay, SB 7. SB 7 is a renewal of a very popular bill called Assembly Bill 900. What this bill does, very quickly, any large clean energy project or a stadium project, 100 million or more, it guarantees that these projects would get a 270-day judicial hearing in the courts if there is a challenge to the California Environmental Quality Act. So for example, the new Warrior Stadium in downtown San Francisco utilized this bill to be able to get an expedited judicial review in the Superior Court system on a CEQA challenge. Our belief is this bill shouldn't just be for millionaires and billionaires. It should also be for middle-class families. So what we're also saying is for any housing development with a gross cost of 15 million, construction cost of 15 million or more, would also receive an expedited judicial review on a CEQA challenge no more than 270 days. Again, folks are always saying, how do we get housing built quicker? Well, it's on the CEQA review in the courts. It preserves the California Environmental Quality Act. It doesn't take any authority away from the judge. It simply puts a shot clock on the judge for when he or she can rule on the case. Finally, SB 10. SB 10 gives city councils and board of supervisors the ability, this is voluntary, the ability to approve market rate and affordable housing up to 10 units on an infill lot. So up to 10 units, infill for market rate or affordable on an infill lot would get expedited review at the city council or board of supervisor level. This is only voluntary. The board of supervisors doesn't have to use it. The city council doesn't have to use it, but it would be a tool in their belt to be able to promote infill growth within the downtown core and within the community. All right, finally, I just want to give out our email address and our phone number. If you have any questions ever on issues of housing, call us 916-651-4002, 916-651-4002. You can email me, senator.mcguire@senate.ca.gov. Summer Cassell, who I'm grateful to work with, is on with me. We're going to answer any and all questions, and we work all the time with Ms. Murray and Ms. Webster. And just again, to these two amazing women, thank you for your incredible work. And if you have questions, we'll work with them as well. And I look forward to the conversation tonight. And thank you again for allowing me to be with you tonight.
Well, thank you, Senator McGuire. And I want to just caution people on your last comment on that we're going to get to all the questions because there's a lot. So we're going to do our best, and I'm trying to group them together as fast as they're coming in. But if we do have questions that can't be answered, perhaps we can send them to your office and they can be addressed that way.
Perfect.
So there's been a couple questions about what can public land be used for in terms of housing? Is that an opportunity to put housing on it, but also how are you protecting all the open space and ag and things like that from overdevelopment? So again, we have this tension between we need housing, we need places to put it, but we want to make sure that we're also preserving the character and of our green spaces.
Yeah, so let's talk about, for example, like SB 10. SB 10 can't be utilized in areas that don't, on greenfield, in non-infill lots. So you just can't do it. If you want to put an ADU or a JADU in the unincorporated areas of Marin County, for example, you got to get a perk test to even be able to do that. And you have to follow local zoning based off of the county. So these items, including the duplex, fourplex, you have to get a perk test as well. If the septic system can't take the load, then you can't build. So it's very clear on that. We have incredible guardrails on SB6. SB6 is the dead and dying mall bill. You can't go use that willy-nilly on any type of development, specifically to dead and dying malls and office parks. And we also have thresholds in there in regards to vacancy. So happy to get feedback and if we can put additional guardrails, but we've really tried to tailor these tightly to ensure that we're not looking at development. We never want sprawl. It's the last thing we need. And we would never develop on land that is protected ag and open space. This is really focused for infill development in our cities, not on greenfields outside of those in community separators.
So as far as actually building housing on public land, that would be land that maybe had been surplus, but that had owned by a school district or a city. You want to?
It could be, yeah. So let's take, for example, there are some cities in Marin County that are looking at potentially developing their corporation yards and consolidating their public works with other cities. So you have one corporation yard, I'm making this up, by the way, one corporation yard for Southern Marin cities. So then that would free up the ability to be able to build homes, for example. School districts, there are some school districts in Marin County that have surplus land that could potentially use. You're absolutely right, Ms. Marin.
And that again would follow the local zoning and all the land use things. So getting a couple of questions around zoning, and I'm going to preface it first with a question that talks about how in a recent study, the UC Berkeley put 4 Marin cities among the top 10 most segregated cities in the Bay Area. And are there housing policies that you could advance that would help change that situation and help lower income families and minorities have access to communities of opportunity? And another questioner points out that if you've read the book, The Color of Law, you would understand that zoning can often be based in prejudice and discrimination. And so maybe we don't always want to keep existing zoning. Maybe there's a need to look at some zoning changes that would reduce inequity.
I think that these bills that I just discussed, and again, I'm happy to get your comments and criticisms and concerns related to them. I think we have some choices, and there's been a debate. Let's be candid about this. Housing is probably the most controversial issue that's out there, right? So we can continue to fight about it. We can continue to ignore the problem, or we can do something about it. Loud and clear, SB 50, as was drafted 2 years ago, that took a one-size-fits-all approach for San Francisco and for Sausalito, didn't work. And I've been very clear on that. But simply to ignore the problem makes it worse. So that's why a much more strategic approach has been advanced, focusing on economic blight in our communities, dead and dying malls, for example, dead and dying office parks, focusing on providing city councils and board of supervisors the tool to be able to do expedited development for infill housing up to 10 units. If y'all don't want to see housing linked to zoning, housing linked to transit, what's the other option? The option of no doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it's hurt us. Almost 2/3 of the workforce in Marin County is driving in each and every day outside of the county. So look forward to working with each and every one of you. We've tried to take a much more strategic, eloquent approach to the issue of housing. And by the way, I'll just say this, Ms. Marin, I'll turn it back to you. We work hand in hand with the mayors and council members in Marin County on all housing related bills. We've put in hundreds of hours of meetings with their legislative committee, trying to be able to get it right for Marin County. And I just want to take a moment to the mayors and council members. We work tirelessly with them. Alice Fredericks really has been the front of that. And I just want to say thank you to the councilwoman for her incredible work. And we're going to continue to do that I'm a big believer, top down doesn't work. You got to work with those who are in charge, the local communities, and we're doing that each and every day on each of these bills now and in the past.
Well, we appreciate that kind of due diligence and collaboration. And at Housing Crisis Action, we really believe one of the reasons we haven't had the housing we need is the lack of political will, and that it's on us to get behind people who support housing like yourself and give you that support you need, and laud you as our champion, and make sure that when things get tough and you have to make those tough votes to support more housing, that you know the people are behind you. And so we will continue to do that. So other questions about the RHNA numbers, can they be challenged? Is there help if a city gets a higher RHNA number to actually get that housing built? Is there anything in the works to sort of help people who want to do more, have the ability to do more? Because a lot of times the cities they can't build it themselves. How do they get it done?
That's why this affordable housing bond is going to be so critical, right? Look, we've partnered, and I want to say thank you to the Novato City Council. The Novato City Council has really stuck their neck out time and time again on the issue of affordable housing. We're about to develop a 50-unit housing development on Hamilton, in partnership with the amazing Mary Kay and Paul from Homeward Bound. And the Novato City Council spoke up loud and clear that they want to be able to help end veterans' homelessness in this county. And thanks in partnership to the good folks at the Marin Community Foundation, the Board of Supervisors who put in $2 million, the Marin Community Foundation has put in $2 million, the state's put in $3 million. We're going to get 50 units of permanent supportive housing on Hamilton, working in connection with the community, working in connection with the city council. We're going to get this built. But there's a gap in funding that we need for this affordable housing bond. In Sausalito, I want to say thank you to the Sausalito City Council. We're working in connection with them and the Richardson Bay Regional Authority and BCDC on all issues related to affordable housing for seniors and those who are on the bay and in dilapidated boats, and how we can get them permanent supportive housing. Again, the Sausalito City Council has been actively and engaged on this issue. So, but they need funding. We desperately need funding. And that's where I think the state can play a role. In addition to the general fund allocations that I just talked about, we need to be able to get this affordable housing bond passed. And by the way, it has an economic development component to it. If you think about this recovery that we're going to need family sustaining wages, and these construction jobs will put people to work here in the North Bay, getting these housing units that we desperately needed built.
Well, the housing bond sounds terrific, and I look forward to supporting it. Another question, and it relates to a way we used to fund housing, especially affordable housing, was redevelopment. And as we know, former Governor Brown killed redevelopment. Do you see anything like redevelopment coming back? Obviously blight didn't go away. Maybe redevelopment got abused in a few places, but I think it was more helpful than not. And we had a guaranteed source of funding there with that 20% set aside for affordable housing.
We desperately need redevelopment. Look, I think just being candid, I think Governor Jerry Brown will go down as one of the best governors that this state has ever seen. And I have significant disagreement on the issue of redevelopment. Former city council member of the Board of Supervisors, and redevelopment was a game changer in the development of affordable housing, as well as smart growth and economic development. We need it back. Myself and Senator Jim Bell advanced redevelopment 2.0 bill last year. It was supported by the California League of Cities, all the city councils in the state, the California State Association of Counties, all the Board of Supervisors in the state, and it didn't get signed. So we desperately need to bring back redevelopment, both for housing and economic development and small business growth. The vast majority of businesses in the state have 50 employees or less. Small businesses are the beating heart of our economy, and they need our help. And I think we need to be able to bring redevelopment back as soon as possible. I just don't know if this Governor Gavin Newsom is going to sign a bill like that.
Well, now I think that brings up a good point that last year you were limited because of the pandemic and the shutdown on how many bills you could bring forward. So do you see that again occurring this year, that like some of the bills, like maybe that one you'd want to bring back, or you're going to have to ration how many bills you can put forward?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Cynthia. Yes, I think that we're going to see a limit on bills, not nearly as extreme as what we saw last year. The legislature limited the Senate. The state Senate limited the number of bills that senators could advance. They had to be focused on COVID, vaccinations, testing, wildfire, housing, and homelessness, and our energy grid. That was our priority. We had to be able to take a much more strategic approach. We're going to have a bit of a broader approach this year, but we're still asking members to be able to not advance, I'm making this up, 30 bills this year. We're asking potentially for 12 or 15. There's not been a set number of bills that's been assigned to each individual members. The negotiations are still happening, but I would not be surprised to be able to see some type of limit advance this year. But the affordable housing bond will be one of those critical bills that will move.
Fantastic. We have some questions about community land trust, and I'm trying to merge some questions together, so forgive me if it comes out a little garbled. So one is that, do you have any plans for opportunity zones, and do you see that community land trust could play a role there?
I do. I think we need to be able to get the opportunity. So first and foremost, on opportunity zones, we need to be able to get the opportunity zone Marin City back.
Could you explain to people what opportunity zones are, and maybe even what community land trust, because I don't think we should presume everybody knows what those things are.
Sure. So bottom line on opportunity zones, and I'm just going to
high level,
not give the formal definition, but it's they're zones for economic development and additional tax credits. And essentially, if you guarantee, I'm making this up, if you guarantee that you're going to put 1,000 jobs in an opportunity zone, you may not pay taxes for up to 10 years, for example. If you hire those individuals and you put a certain amount of investment in that zone during that decade period. If you do not do that, then you're going to have to be able to pay it in arrears. It's an accountability mechanism. Marin City, one of the most disadvantaged in the North Bay, lost it. It went down south. This has been an issue that we need to be able to bring back. That's been our top priority. Governor Newsom is a fan of opportunity zones. That is an issue that I can see expanded. The role of housing trusts and community land trusts, essentially going and taking that land, purchasing it, putting it into a trust, have a permanent deed restriction, making those homes affordable, and that land can never be sold for redevelopment, for example. I think they need to play an active role, and we'd love to be able to work. We've heard from folks, especially out in West Marin, on this specific issue. Supervisor Rodoni has been an incredible champion of this, and we'd love to be able to work with any of the land trusts and housing trusts in Marin and the North Bay on this specific issue.
I know that was community land trusts were very helpful in teacher housing in Sonoma County. So there is a good model there. The other person said also equity housing co-ops as another tool, maybe in the toolbox to help.
Absolutely. Look, there is no silver bullet to our housing crisis. But what we can't do, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, and I know it's really easy for me to say this, the strategy of no longer works. And I am going to continue to say it because I believe it. The longer we say no to a local approach, the more we're going to see individuals introduce top-down legislation that's going to force us. And that's what I don't want. And that's not my approach. We work with Joanne Webster from the San Rafael Chamber on issues of legislation each and every year, seeking their feedback. We do that with mayors and council members. But I got to be honest, if we don't start showing progress, which, by the way, especially on homelessness, Marin County has been a model county on the rapid rehousing. The city of San Rafael, the county of Marin, we need to hold them up as a poster child for rapid rehousing of homeless residents. We need to be able to take that same approach when it comes to workforce housing as well. And I think we can do it without bringing radical change to our communities. And Marin has a really good story to tell, in particular, Ms. Webster, is it over 300 individuals, you would know better than I, have been now housed thanks to the Rapid Rehousing Program?
The fabulous program. Yes. Thank you, Senator, for bringing that up.
Is it 300?
I actually don't know the number offhand, so I apologize for that. But it is maybe Mary Kay Sweeney knows if she's on the line.
It's been really impressive. And I just want to say thank you, because this community has rallied like never before on this issue.
Well, you answered the question that I was going to ask, because it was about how do you balance the desire for local control with the need for more housing. And I think that was a great example. And so since you raised homelessness, there is great concern about on two ends. One is how do we get more homeless people housed? And Marin, as you said, is doing a good job, but could do more. And then the other is concern about how expensive it is, and you know why certain groups are being given special treatment in a way. So is there more that you can see on homelessness that you would support doing?
Yes. So look, it is always going to be, I won't say always, the vast majority of the time, it's going to be more expensive to be able to buy a piece of land, move the dirt, and develop than it is to be able to buy a structure that is already built. Not always, but the vast majority of the time, especially with the price of dirt in our neck of the woods, it's going to be cheaper. So that's why the state of California, and by the way, this is controversial. That's why we've moved forward on the Project Home Key program, where we're purchasing hotels, transitioning them to permanent supportive housing. In addition, if we can get these affordable housing dollars into the hands of local communities, when apartment buildings go up for sale, for example, I'm a firm believer, and I just saw a chat come up about housing preservation. That's another strategic strategy. But our communities have to have the dollars to do it. So if they don't have a local housing measure that is funding the acquisition of these developments when they come up on the market, then the state has to do it. And I'm a firm believer that we can do it, but we have to get the dollars into the hands. And I don't mean to be that person that keeps coming back to one thing, but the only way that local communities are going to be able to achieve what they need to is taking those buildings, those apartment buildings, those hotels that are already built, and reusing them. It's going to be critical. It's cheaper for the taxpayer, and candidly, it expedites the time that we can get people housed, but we have to get the money into the hands of local communities quickly.
Well, I'm glad you can look at the chat. I'm barely keeping up here because there's a lot going on. So another question was, how would you support reauthorization of the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program, which targets lower income households? Are you familiar with that?
I am. I think that we need to look at some changes, but I think big picture, look, my bottom line is I think we need to look at a restructuring of cap and trade in this state, which is the biggest polluters pay, right? And we need to be able to get dividends dollars into the hands of the most vulnerable Californians, to be able to do what's right, whether that is energy upgrades to their home, to be able to, we have this whole goal of phasing out the combustion engine. Let me be candid. I'm a full supporter of that. But until we allow the vast majority of Californians to be able to afford to transition and do the right thing, it's not going to happen. So we have to develop a much more aggressive approach when it comes to energy efficiency of commercial buildings, residential buildings, and on the cap and trade program on our largest polluters. More to come. You're going to see some focus on that this year, and I'd be happy to come back and talk more about it.
Thank you. Another question is, would you support extending property tax pass-through exemptions provided to, and I do not know what this means, so I hope you do, LIHTC properties to all renters?
Low-income housing tax credits.
Thank you.
So no, all good. So yes, there's been a group that has been incredibly active, and I just want to say thank you to Marin on this issue. It is an item that we're looking at right now. I am not trying to be squishy with you, but it is an issue that we are looking at in the budget and I'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation on this as well.
Okay, great. On ADUs, you talked about them before, and we're very excited, Marin, that there's a great opportunity to create more units using ADUs. You mentioned that they would conform with zoning, and we got some pushback in the chat that the parking requirements are changed from what the zoning would be on that. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Again, I will always say, I don't ever want to BS anybody. I got to go back and take a look. So there is change. What was the comment? I'm sorry. I'm just going to write this down and we'll get back.
Let me see if just that is saying that the property restrictions aren't the same for ADUs as what it would be under the regular zoning.
Property restrictions on ADUs. I am not as familiar on
the chat. It's back there towards the beginning.
Okay. If we capture that individual's name, I will get back to them. And Elise just said most do not require parking. Elise is absolutely right.
SB 9 has no off-street parking, which is an override of local zoning.
Correct. On the parking side, yes. On the development side, no. On the development side, you have to follow all local zoning. And yes, on the issue of parking, there would not be mandated number of parking spots for a duplex, for example. But you could not just go hog wild and develop whatever you want. If you can't build a second unit right now behind a house, you can't do a duplex. You have to follow all local zoning, floor area ratio, height, setback requirements, etc. But you're absolutely right in regards to the issue of parking, 100%.
And just for the benefit, since we're on the subject, Aging Action Initiative is doing an ADU Expo on March 1st at 2 o'clock, and we'll send more information in the follow-up email after this. But there is more information coming out if you're interested in learning more about ADUs. This question is about evictions, and the questioner says eviction moratoriums must come with a reprieve for property owners' mortgages to satisfy the bank so that the savings can be passed on to renters. Would you support such an appropriation?
So reprieve on property owner mortgages, but if we're going to pay back a majority of the rent that's already owed, that's a little bit of double dip, but I would be happy to have a conversation. So I'm just going to say, so whoever asked that, again, I am not trying to avoid the question. Summer Cassell has put her email address into the chat, but so the question is paying back overdue mortgage. Is that the question, Ms. Murray?
It just says reprieve for property owners' mortgages to satisfy the banks so that the savings can be passed on to renters. So it must mean like some forgiveness from, I'm not sure what it means.
So I think the bottom line is what we're taking a look at is we're doing this study about where we believe back, I'm going to try to back into this and see if this gets it. So we're doing a study on back rents. There's a range of numbers depending on the group on how much people believe we have in total back rents since the moratorium has taken place. Senate has its number. We do not believe it is going to be $4 billion, as some have said. We believe it's going to be much less. So what the part of the negotiation is how much on the dollar would be paid for back rent, number one. Number two, going forward, does that 25% threshold, which is currently in law that the renter still has to pay, stay, or is it move up? There are a lot of other variables that are being discussed and negotiated even as we speak. But I assure you, as part of the funds that have been secured, we need to be able to pay that back rent off. It may not be 100%, but it will be a significant portion of the rent that is owed to landlords. So more to come on that, and it's actively being negotiated.
Which is really important because the lot of the landlords are mom and pop types. They're not big companies, and if they don't get the rent, then they can't afford the mortgage, and they end up having to sell, and maybe it doesn't even stay as a rental, and then we lose more of our rental stock. So everything has ups and downsides. So another question on SB 9 is worried about high fire severity in areas in the SRA, which again, I'm not sure what these abbreviations are. And they're saying right now the Board of Forestry is considering exempting residential and all ADUs from fire safe road regulations. And if those areas are not excluded, then it opens the door to far more development in high fire severity areas, not in the city and towns where we should be developing the infill type housing.
So if the local government precludes development in high fire hazard severity areas, then you can't use this law, bottom line. So it's up to the local city council or board of supervisors to be able to ban the development. If you can put a 12,000 square foot mansion up on a hill in a high fire severity zone, then you can put a duplex. It's that simple. So if the local government, this is local control, the local government bans the development of residential units in high fire hazard severity zone, you can't use this law. By the way, we have a bill that's moving forward right now that would heavily restrict residential development in high fire hazard zones. So for example, developers would have to meet certain requirements. You can't have one way in, one way out. Learn that the hard way, seeing the fires in the North Bay. You have to have turnout lanes. If you're going to look at a larger development, apartment complex, for example, in a fire severity zone, part of the HOA has to go for fire break maintenance, shady tree fire break maintenance, vegetation management, etc. So developers would have to hit certain thresholds to be able to develop in these high fire hazard zones. The SRA, the state responsibility area, that is where CAL FIRE responds and typically are the higher fire threat zones in counties.
So a lot of questions about the cost of building affordable housing, and that it seems to be higher than regular housing to be built for some reason, higher than in other states. Is there anything in the bills you're looking at that would help reduce those costs, or other ways that those costs could be brought down?
There is not a streamline. So for example, well, let's talk about SB 10. So SB 10 is a streamlined process. So it would not go through the typical approval process at a city council. So that cuts, I mean, it could be years depending on the project off, but it has a limit of up to 10 units. So it's much more strategic and it's for infill. That causes, I get it, that causes additional concern because it would not go through the standard process. But again, I want to get back to where we're at. So loud and clear, and I agree, we should not link housing directly to transit. But what's our answer right now? Are we going to oppose everything? I personally think that's the wrong approach. And I know that is not probably the most politically correct answer for some and what you want to hear. But look, I come from challenge. I've had challenges with housing, and we can't continue the way we've done it. We have to make workforce housing more affordable in the state. We have to. Look at the business climate that we have. Look at the challenges that we have with folks being able to stay in the state that they grew up in. So I'm a firm believer that what works in San Francisco or downtown Los Angeles, or what even works in a community of 500,000 will not work in Marin or Sonoma or Eureka. But we have to have some answers to this crisis. So is parking exempted from the duplex, fourplex bill? Yes. Is all local zoning still intact? Yes. There's going to have to be some give and take in this. And I get it. Not having to worry about this is the easiest approach, but we can no longer have the strategy of no as our top strategy. That's just my opinion. And I may pay political price for that, but I just want to be honest about it. We can't just keep saying no.
Well, I think that your admonition is warranted and should be heeded, because anybody who's following what's going on at the state level can see that if we don't solve our own problems, somebody else will. And we're far better off doing it within the community. So really appreciate that caution. Let's talk a little bit in the few minutes we have left about senior housing. And also housing for people with challenges, disabilities, and things like that. There seems to be some concerns about, especially affordable housing built that they can use. One person saying, you know, they can't climb stairs and they can't get out of a affordable housing unit that has stairs. So is there things out there to help people, seniors and people in the disabled community?
There is some limited dollars that are available, yes. For example, MCIL does an amazing job here in Marin County, and just want to say thank you to Eli for all of his incredible work and the entire team at MCIL. Yes, there's some limited funding. In the last housing bond, I'm trying to do it off the top of my head, and that's always dangerous. There was about $1 billion, I believe, for senior affordable housing, and we'd look at a direct allocation potentially for senior affordable housing this time as well. So I think personally, my opinion, and again, this is still incredibly squishy and want to get your feedback on this. I think there should be a direct allocation for veterans affordable housing, and I think that there needs to be a direct allocation for senior affordable housing. If we take a look at Sausalito, for example, and the only reason I say that is because we're working directly with them on this project. They desperately need funding for senior affordable housing. When you take a look at the top growth population when it comes to homelessness in the state, one of the top percentage growth populations, it's women over the age of 65, because they don't have the retirement security that they need to be able to live in a high-priced area like the San Francisco Bay Area. So we have to advance that. My mom is in that category. And it's really personal for me, candidly, and it's the right thing to do. And in a community like Marin, it's right for that type of investment for senior affordable housing. So it's something that I am going to fight for, and I really believe that we need to advance that.
Totally agree with you. And it's also, I think 1 out of every 5 seniors now is living in poverty. So we have 1 out of every 5 children and 1 out of every 5 seniors in California. Those barbells just are unacceptable. And it is especially because women live longer, the senior women being impacted. And I'm happy to hear that you're working on senior housing for those population in Marin. Aren't we one of the oldest counties in the state?
I think we are the oldest, yeah.
Yeah, so it really is important. So we just have a couple of minutes left, Mike, and I'd love to give you just a couple minutes to sort of wrap up what we've talked about tonight. If there's anything else that you wanted to talk about, non-housing related, that you think is important. I mean, we are living in some extraordinary times around dealing with the COVID and vaccinations and the recovery. So I'd love to give you just a few minutes to give us any final remarks.
Thank you so much. And again, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for joining us here for this forum. I'm sorry if I did not get to your exact question. Summer is going to put her email address into the chat once again. Please hit us up anytime. I know that we may not always agree, but one thing that you're going to have from me is an open door and an ear to listen. And candidly, I need to learn, and I'm going to learn from you. So I really hope that you would reach out to us and be able to work with us. So quickly on a few other items, I'd like to talk about vaccinations. You're going to see a significant change in the way our vaccination strategy is being implemented in the state of California here in the next 30 days. I think that folks are going to feel encouraged by this change of doing mass vaccinations here in the state of California. Much more to come on that. Part of a working group between the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor's office who's working on that strategy. I think you're going to see, and we heard that announcement today by the governor, anyone 65 and up here very soon will be able to get the vaccination. And we're going to see additional changes, which we desperately need here in the coming few weeks. Number 2, we'd like to talk about wildfire. $1 billion is being invested in wildfire prevention and response. About $500 million will be for wildfire prevention. We just met with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority today. Very grateful to the hard work, and thank you to the voters who passed the tax to be able to put about 10 million in for wildfire prevention in Marin County. We're working with them on how we can partner to be able to get additional wildfire prevention dollars into the county of Marin. It's going to be really, really critical. And that's a focus of ours as well. Number 3, for small business relief. We just put in another $500 million for small business relief for small businesses in the state, up to a $25,000 grant. You do not have to pay it back. The first 500 million, it's oversubscribed. We just are going to put in another 500 million. More details will come on that, and we'll work with Joanne Webster through the chamber to be able to get you additional information, because that's going to be absolutely critical that we put additional dollars into small business assistance. And the last piece I'll just mention is on the issue of economic recovery. This is an issue that is going to be with us here through the next 3 to 4 years. We believe we've hit bottom when it comes to the recession. We actually are seeing an uptick in numbers in many areas of the state, not all. And that is an eye that I have is on our economic recovery and how we can help small businesses recover. We've lost, just on the tourism side alone, 601,000 jobs since February. Just on tourism alone, we had a $74 billion swing in tourism dollars from last year to today. It's a massive hit, and that's a focus that we're going to have. Again, email anytime, call 916-651-4002. Thank you for allowing me this incredible opportunity to work with you. It is such an honor, and I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this job. And I'm grateful to work with you and to be able to work in Marin County. You are incredibly generous, you are innovative, and I know that our best days are ahead because we're going to tackle these challenges together. And thank you again to Cynthia, to Joanne for convening tonight. It means so much to me.
Well, we're grateful for your leadership and for the level of public service that you have provided so far, and will be doing more, because I've never seen somebody so energetic and committed to trying to help the people you serve. So we're very, very appreciative. But I think one of the takeaways is none of us can do this alone. We have to do it together, and it really needs to be as much a collaboration as possible. And as I said, Housing Crisis Action, we're over 700 members now. We are committed to housing of all kinds for Marin County, and we want more people to join us and support the political leaders of this county who also want more housing. So please join us in this fight, because it's not going to happen unless we give that political support and show up and testify and do what it takes to, because we do have a substantial amount of people who are afraid of more housing, and we just need to really stay together and work to achieve that goal. We will not be the place we want Marin to be if we don't get more housing. It is a fundamental thing. And as Mike repeated, either we do it and make it be the right thing for us, or somebody else will. So let's work together to make sure we can get the housing that Marin needs. Katie's just putting up a screen. We encourage you to follow us on social media at Housing Marin. You can contact us at housingcrisisaction@gmail.com. And we encourage you again to attend the ADU Expo that Aging Action Initiative is putting on March 1st at 2 o'clock. And we have recorded this. We are going to follow this meeting up with an email that'll give you the link to the recording and other information. But if you need information in the meantime, please let us know. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your participation. I did my best to get to all your questions. I hope we covered a lot. And I think Mike is very generous in saying he'll come back. So maybe in 6 months or so, when we have some more understanding what's going on for legislation, we'll have Mike back, and let's get behind that housing bond. We look forward to getting more information and how we can support it. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you.